everybody. Welcome. My name is Brandy Alden, and I am here today with Samantha Leonard, founder of Davidson Yoga Therapy and Health Coaching. Today, we will be discussing the benefits of yoga therapy, and before we do, I'm going to share with you a bit more about Samantha's incredible background and experience. Samantha is a yoga therapist trained through Duke Integrative Health, a member of the International Association of Yoga Therapists, and a Noom Inc. certified professional health coach. She has amassed over 35 years of her practice, 24,000 hours of education and experience in curriculum design, and 10 plus years in training therapeutic breath, yoga, movement, lifestyle, and meditation techniques for conditions all the way from anxiety to diabetes to autoimmune conditions, from neurological disorders to even long COVID recovery. I think it's safe to say that most people are familiar with yoga, but they may not be familiar with yoga therapy. Can you help explain what yoga therapy is for those who may be unfamiliar?
Yes, and I work very hard to create a little elevator speech that makes it very easy, but it always escapes me whenever I'm asked. So I'll start by saying that what we have come to understand in yoga, as yoga in the West, is mostly a form of exercise. So you might go to a class and you might be choreographed through a series of postures, and at the very end you feel very stretched out, you feel very calm and relaxed. And yoga therapy is more concentrated to the needs of the individual. So there's a whole science behind it, there's a whole skill set, there's a whole a bunch of training that you need to go through in order to be able to do this. But the science of it really is that the postures that we do in yoga classes, the purpose of those postures, first of all, is to help us to get rid of our aches and pains, as you would expect. But the second purpose of doing those poses is to develop the breath, our capacity to breathe. So we can heal ourselves structurally through the poses, but then we can start to heal ourselves in our physiological and mental states by working with the breath in certain ways. And that's a whole science. When we work with the breath and we start to calm the animal that's inside of us, the fight or flight, and we start to balance that, our minds become more balanced. And when we have these sort of like places of stillness and safety, and the seat of our mind is safe inside our body, then we can start to get into the more heart-centered practices, which are spiritual. So it's a process, it's a science, and there's a whole lot that goes behind it. But I hope that was a brief enough description.
Yes.
Which also describes the process, yes.
Even though I have been able to work with you in your practice, I don't know if I ever knew it to that depth. So that's very interesting. I know we were just talking before this interview about how yoga is something that I started doing in my life about a couple years ago, and I think that was one of the things that drew me to it, is that it can be changed to adapt to so many different people. Some days I didn't feel like doing some of the more difficult exercises that have required more movement, and so I was able to adapt that, and I think you just take that a step further as a yoga therapist.
Certainly, you make a very good point to bring up how we adapt poses to meet the needs of the person, any of the practices actually. So one day you may be able to do a very strong practice and stretch your hamstrings, and then another day, this is something my teacher always says, you may not need anything about your hamstrings, it might be more about your liver, and then another day it might be more about your attitude, so we adapt the practice to meet the specific needs of the person, and those needs vary from day to day. So what I really, really love about this is being able to teach people to use it on their own at home. So that's its intention, ultimately, is to provide tools so that people can self-manage.
That's wonderful.
The human condition, yeah.
I know that's one of the most vital skills I think I've learned over the years, is how to apply that to my life and to adapt it to each daily practice. Yeah. All right, so the next question I have for you are, what kinds of things do you do as a yoga therapist and health coach to help people better manage their symptoms? Now, we already covered this a little bit, but can you go in depth even more about the specific breathing exercises and different things that you help contribute to their lives?
Yeah, actually I can take it a little bit more in depth. Very, very first thing that I try to do, and there are different ways because they're not always receptive to becoming aware of what's happening in the sensation or in the emotion. So finding a way to help the person build their own awareness. So I might use a series of poses, maybe 2 poses, and we might move in and out of those poses repetitively to build awareness, to build, to replace a pattern. So for instance, if it hurts me to raise my arm this way, we might do something like this repetitively, and it will build awareness of the muscles in and around the shoulder blade and make it more easy to do something like this in the future. So awareness building is the number one thing I try to do, so that you can have a conversation with your own shoulder about what's going on. The movement becomes a conversation. And when we get into the breathing, if I can help the person relax enough into themselves to move in a conversational way with their pain, or to move in a conversational way with their breath into the emotion, that is the ultimate goal. I hope to answer your question.
Yes,
Okay.
and actually,
Yeah.
you brought up a really interesting point, because that's a lot of my goal through Finding Your Internal Symphony, is to help people become aware of the power of having that strong relationship with your body and with your mind. And I know for me, as somebody who has dealt with chronic illnesses, being able to learn how to listen to the signs my body are giving me is it is very powerful, and it's made a huge impact on my recovery and my healing journey. So I love that you brought that up, because I do think that encompasses why yoga and mindfulness and everything that goes into this is so important for not just people who are struggling with pain to know about, but everyone to really practice in their daily lives.
And when we talk about it in terms of like having a conversation with our own body, I think it just softens the relationship, and it instills a greater sense of power. These aren't just like orphaned pains. Well, we have orphaned them because we've given over the power of their healing to other professionals. Not that that's a bad thing. We need our medical professionals. We need people to help guide us. But when we can have those conversations, when we can soften toward them and see them as like little orphans and care for them, it's self-care, and it's a really powerful shift in the way we live. I have a pain, I'm going to go to the doctor, only he can fix it. Well, guess what? I can fix it too. If I have that softness and that conversation, that relationship with myself. So I'm happy to hear all of your experiences, everything.
Yeah, this is really amazing. I worked with Samantha, probably about maybe 3 or 4 years ago now.
Yeah.
And I think, over my experience over these past couple of years, it's incredible how much more I feel like I am learning to appreciate all of the work that we did.
I think we planted really good seeds during that time.
Oh my
and
gosh,
then
yes.
the seeds grew. They had an effect.
I can't even speak to how much you've helped me even as a singer with my breathing. I mean, just in so many aspects. Okay.
I have yet to hear you sing too. So.
Oh, I guess I'll have to show you for sure. All right, so I think a lot of people associate yoga with treating anxiety.
Yes.
But it can treat so much more than that.
Oh,
What are
yes.
some of the top conditions you have treated through your practice?
The biggest one that comes to mind right now is ALS. So
Wow.
somebody with ALS, and it's a degenerative disease. You're aware, like they lose control over limbs, walking, and eventually body functions, and it's a fatal disease. So that is a really interesting one, and neurological. It does involve some movement. I would manipulate the limbs in ways that can alleviate the pain and the aching that's sometimes involved in that, increase the circulation, but a lot of times it's the relationship that we develop together, and we talk about really deep stuff, about the acceptance of this human condition and how, what's next. what happens after this? You know, how can we manage all? It's deep. It's too deep for me to even discuss. Like, it's hard for me to put into words. So neurological conditions like that, I'll get back to your question. Diabetes is another one that's very, very well affected by a strong yoga practice. Diabetes, goodness, I mean, there's so many things. A lot of like chronic joint inflammatory issues.
I would imagine yoga therapy would be very good for gut issues as well.
Oh my goodness. If you think about what a chronic fight or flight will do to an animal, so the animal will be like this all the time, and the breath will be high, tight, and shallow, and the animal will be on alert, instinctual alert, rather than executive function alert. There are so many things about being in chronic fight or flight, which, by the way, we all have been in since, well, probably longer before this, but since COVID started, we're all scared to death of this. So we're all here. But this affects every system in the body. So it affects you structurally like this. It affects my ability to think clearly because I'm instinctually, looking around me rather than with my brain. It affects my heart rate. It affects the digestive system. So a lot of inflammatory intestinal things. We got IBS, C and D. I work with those a lot, actually. Thank you for reminding me. Ulcerative colitis. These are all very, very strongly affected by the repetition of a yoga therapy practice, by the breathing methods of a yoga therapy practice, which are going to help to bring that nervous system of the animal that's in fight or flight, to bring it down, to calm it down, and every kind of inflammatory condition is positively affected.
That's incredible, and I mean that covers so much too.
Yes, it does. I mean, anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the most common misconceptions you often hear when it comes to yoga therapy, or just yoga in general?
Well, the first one is that you have to be flexible already, that you have to have some experience in yoga. I actually prefer it when people don't have experience.
Interesting.
Because they already have patterns of movement that they come in with, and it's very hard to change patterns that are that strong when they have a yoga practice already. That it's for young people, flexible people. It's not for older folks. It's not for, you don't have to be a Cirque du Soleil acrobat to do it. And you can even do it, if all you can do is lie down in your bed, you can do yoga therapy. And one other chronic misconception about this is that it needs to involve movement. It doesn't even need to involve movement. We might just talk. We might go for a walk. We might make it a mindfulness walk. We might connect someone to something beloved in their childhood and bring it into their present. It's many, many ways that we can go about this practice. So.
Well, I've heard too that we hold trauma in different places in our bodies, so I'm sure as we move, that's helping release that trauma in the same way that being able to have a conversation about that sort of thing. Is
Sure.
that correct?
Absolutely. Trauma presents differently in different people, and chronic stress presents as like physical trauma in the body, as we would expect to see it. So really, we're all holding on to something, and moving and breathing in that conversational way, it does help you to go, what's happening in my hip here? And as we start to release, this is the perfect example. And this is my own example, that I have a chronic neck issue, and it is because I found through my constant practice of conversational movement and breath that there is this really, really under the radar holding that I do, and it's like this, and it's like a fight response. I'm prepared to do something, I'm prepared for whatever's coming at me, and this is a chronic holding pattern that I have. And this is also from trauma, right? And when I start to become aware of that through this conversational stuff, I can release it. And it is releasing it from the body, but it's releasing it from your experience as well. that chronic holding is no longer there.
That's really interesting.
I apologize if I'm a little too wordy here today, but I'm so grateful to be able to talk about it.
No, I love when I get to interview people who are really passionate about what they do, because then you get all of this really in-depth information that you would not typically get from just looking at somebody's website.
Yeah.
And so I love that you're going in depth, because I think that's going to really help people who are watching to be able to understand this on a deeper level. All right, so the next question I have for you, especially after what we just talked about, is what inspired you to go into yoga therapy?
Well, this is a perfect segue. My past. So I had a traumatic childhood. And I remember times when I just would go outside and inside I would be screaming, why? Why does this kind of pain have to happen? And if it's going to happen, how can I turn it around and not just be a victim to this pain, but actually take it and do something with it? That's the only thing you can do, I think, when life really hits you hard. I mean, if it hits you hard over a long period of time, what can I do with what's left? And in my teens, I picked up 2 books. I don't know what possessed me. I went to Walden Books at Beachmont Mall, and I picked up 2 books. One was, I just moved it from here. I keep it out all the time. It's over there now. The Shivananda Companion to Yoga. And I picked up a book on mythology, comparative mythology, by Joseph Campbell. And these 2 books helped me to, they put me on the path to understand, to understand that I had a need to understand why. Why is it, and what can I do about it? They gave me the seeds. The seeds grew. I started seeking out the information. As I got much older and had kids, I was able to go through different sorts of trainings, and I always just needed to know more and more and more, because I felt better and better and better. I was connecting dots and healing, and I didn't know why. So, I'm still on that journey, still asking questions.
I love that. I love lifelong learners like that.
I will never stop. Yeah.
That's such a great attitude. Yeah. Okay. For people out there with chronic conditions, they're often told that medication or counseling are the only treatment options for them. What would you say to those people who are still searching for that treatment that works for them? And would you suggest something like yoga therapy for people who may be struggling with mental illnesses?
Oh my goodness. Well, the answer to that last question is absolutely. I would suggest it. I think it depends, but everything depends on the individual. So there are individuals who they're going to go with what the doctor says and the medication, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, my attitude and the attitude of yoga therapy is what is going to have the most positive effect for you. And if that feels safe, if that's in your lane, I support you. And I'll find ways to support you even better. And then the second part of that question was about mental health.
Yeah, so actually I'm going to throw this in there.
Okay.
I think a lot of people who have struggled with mental illness have maybe tried yoga already, but maybe they didn't try it with the sort of practices that you're introducing.
For sure.
And so how would you differentiate what maybe they have tried and how what you're doing could be even more impactful for them?
Well, first of all, I think that what I do is very rare in these parts. There aren't a lot of people doing this with this kind of education that I have and the experience that I have. So they will go to a yoga class and they'll notice that their anxiety just feels better. And so they'll keep going. And I encourage them to keep doing that. But if they would like to learn more about how to repattern it, I mean, we have this neuroplasticity. If they want to learn how to repattern it and get more into the nitty-gritty, we can get real specific about what a person does, and that can get them farther than going to yoga classes for 6 years. We'll do that in 6 months. So do I suggest it for everybody? Yes, of course I do. It's a very, very powerful thing.
And like I said before too, I mean, from my experience, I would suggest it for everybody too. I think it's just one of those skills like cooking, where it's one of those things that I wish were taught in schools, because it can just have a profound impact on so many aspects of your life.
Absolutely. And I am starting to teach it in schools. I'm teaching all the little kids. They invite me into schools every once in a while to do talks on breathing, and it's always a good day for the teachers. So we get the kids to kind of vibe down. But yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. That's
Yeah.
amazing, though. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, I have one more question for you.
Yes.
Is there anything else you would like to say to those out there who may be struggling with their health?
Yeah, I think this is really important. In having that conversation, or just being open to the conversation with your body, with your emotions, with your pain. It's difficult, but if you can just open yourself to the possibility of the conversation. And beyond that, give yourself the opportunity to see your conditions as teachers instead of just try this hat on. Instead of pushing it away, medicating it down, running away from it, sit with it. And I like to use this analogy, like it's an abandoned orphan. It's something that needs your attention. And before we start shoving it out the door, trying to shove it out the door, let's see what it has to teach us. And if you can also try on the potential that your trauma or your illness, your condition, can help you transcend yourself. You can transcend the condition in other ways. You might live with the condition for the rest of your life, but it might help you transcend other things. It can be very meaningful to have conditions. And I'm the only person you'll ever come to that says, oh, you got back pain and you got IBS? Yes! You know, what is it saying to you? Let's work with it. How can we turn this around and make it, so yeah, in a nutshell, just open yourself to the possibility that this is not the worst thing that ever happened to you, that it could actually be leading to the best thing that ever happened to you.
I mean, I think you embody that too with your story and how you've been able to use your story to build something that you're obviously very proud of, and you should be, and very passionate about, where you get to help people and I'm sure heal those parts of yourself too. And
still healing. It doesn't go away. It's not like I excuse me for saying this, barfed it out and then and then now it's gone. It's there, but it's meaningful now, and so it's got a totally different feeling than before. Now I can embrace it a little bit, embrace it a lot. So
that is perfect. Thank you. That is the perfect end to this. I want to thank you so much for being here today and for everything that you just added to this conversation. If you'd like to learn more about Samantha and her practice, you can visit her website at www.davidsonyogatherapy.com. And for more health-related content like this, you can follow me at finding.your.internal.symphony on Instagram or on YouTube. Thank you guys so much for tuning in.